Hello and welcome back to Beyond the Veil background information. Once again we're going to be doing a species profile, and it's going to be about the Echidnae today, or the Echidnas, which are a really favourite subject of mine because they're interesting. But I will apologise for any issues with audio quality because I'm having to use a headset because my computer microphone has stopped working or is only picking up really, really loud sounds. So Windows 10 for you. But anyway, let's get into it. As usual, I'll start with a quote from one of the stories that the creature is mentioned in or features in. Then I'll discuss the background information for it, like mythology and stuff that's led me to using this creature, and then and then my creature profile for it in my universe. So let's get into it. So, let me get this straight. In this other world you've come from, creatures from Greek myth that give birth to three-headed dogs and stuff actually exist? But that the original ones were all actually fallen angels? I'm lost on this one. How can a creature from a culture before Christianity be a demon? And why the hell do we call that hedgehog thing in Australia an echidna? Quote from his faithful servant. Within the Vale, there's one particular group amongst the serpents that get the biggest issue as being attached to the demonic beings of their heritage, and these are the Echidnae. Now, these are one of my favourite monsters, and even in mythology, I love that Echidna was titled the Mother of Monsters, and produced such curious beasts. Now, within this section, we're going to discuss Echidna in as much detail as we can, then Tiamat, whom I equate as similar to Echidna. Then I will discuss the brief information on Dragonis and Camper, as well as a little bit on Typhon. Afterwards, I will discuss how I've used all four of these within the Vale to come together to create this species, though for Dragonis and Camper it's discussed, but then we'll talk about the species within the Vale. So let's start with the mythological monster from Greece that produced Cerberus, the Sphinx, the Chimera, and a couple of dragons, but these days we hear and think of that curious egg-laying mammal in Australasia. Most people probably know that a lot of the big monsters that Heracles battled in his labours, e.g. the Hydra, were spawned by this one lady and her partner Typhon. If you know about the war between the Olympians and the Titans, you might have heard of Typhon too, so let's introduce you to this being. Firstly, to explain why I like her so much, well, who wouldn't like a half-dragon or half-snake being that can birth three-headed puppies and all the coolest monsters? I don't know if any of you ever got to watch the Disney Hercules series as kids, but I love the character of Echidna in that, with baby Ladon and baby Hydra as well, and the fun episode where Typhon was released and they had their little family reunion. I loved her as a villain, but also that she had such amazing babies. You've probably noticed, if you've known me on DeviantArt, that I love dragons, and alongside Tiamat, Echidna is the seeming dragon-like creature I like in mythology best. So yes, I had to gush a little about something I like, but let's talk about Echidna and stop rambling. So who was Echidna? Well, like most of the Greek pantheon, the exact certainty of whom her parents are vary from author to author, with most stating she's the daughter of Phorcys the sea god, with mothers varying from no one to another Oceanid. Some state her mother is Styx the Oceanid, which would make sense considering her links to the underworld, but one of the podcasts I listened to, produced by Parcast, titled Mythological Monsters, just a thing if you want to look that up, it's quite good, decided she was the daughter of Tartarus and technically the sister of Typhon, going along with the odd incestuous manner of Greek mythology and more links to the underworld. Echidna's name means she-viper. She's considered amongst the Titans, and her description varies from a nymph from head to stomach, then a great serpent according to ancient texts, but in many future references, and I use this too, more like a dragon centaur monster. Echidna is known to be a man-eating monster, a devourer of flesh, fierce, terrible, and who Hesiod states, dies not, nor grows old all her days. Aristophanes describes her as the denizen of the underworld, and also gives her a description of having 100 snake heads, just like her husband Typhon. Now briefly, Typhon was the most fearsome and destructive titan created through Gaia and Tartarus to face down Zeus, who was part serpent or possibly more dragon, with 100 snake heads and breathing fire. Zeus only defeated him through the use of his thunderbolts in a very close battle for control of the cosmos, and he was defeated and thrown down into Tartarus, although some believe he was buried beneath Mount Etna and is the reason it's so active. Typhon in the Vale is like Echidna in the Vale, both regarded as demons, and his description is the same, though often Typhon is a term used for males of the Echidnae species, and well, the pair certainly have an interesting union. In fact, it's one of those few moments in description where you blink and go, that's the first time you hear such a cute thing about the Titans, as Hesiod describes Typhon as joined in love to Echidna. You end up thinking how cute that must be, and might explain their rather constant offspring. Now, together the pair produced many kids, although some sources said Echidna paired and produced with others, including one of her own sons for some of these. But this is the list of all offspring attributed to Echidna, and mainly where we tend to get our knowledge of her from. That is Cerberus, the three-headed dog, Hydra, the many-headed serpent, Orpheus, a two-headed dog. Yes, there's more than one dog. Chimera, the lion, goat, and snake-headed fire-breather. Sphinx, the nymph-headed man-eating lion. The Nemean lion, a lion with an impenetrable hide. Aethon, the giant Caucasian eagle. Ladon, the dragon guarding the golden apples. The Chromionian sow. I don't know, I'm probably not pronouncing that right at all. A vicious semi-wild pig said to have produced the Caledonian boar. Medusa, though many others don't include her. The Colchian dragon, which is the guardian of the Golden Fleece. Scylla, a many dog-headed sea monster, but once again this is a debatable child. An unnamed venom-spitting giant son with snaky feet that worked for Cronus. The Harpies, though these aren't necessarily listed as echidnas, they're often listed as typhons instead, but get attributed to their collective children, although once again that's a debatable, depending on who you read. The sea serpents to attack a Trojan priest in the Trojan Wars, though listed once more as likely to be typhons. And she's also the possible mother of Scyphes, Galonius, and Agaphyrus, as Echidna is sometimes equated as the viper Hercules paired with to produce these three, and therefore the Scythians. Now, aside from her many interesting offspring, Echidna herself is not a being to be messed with, as she lived alone in a cave, guarding what might perhaps be her mother's cave, where she would snatch up passers-by and devour them. Though some sources also link this cave as close to where Typhon might have been banished or struck by the lightning bolts. Trying to figure out where it is and what she's doing there is something many debate, and not relevant for us. So let's talk about the death of Echidna. Well, according to Hesiod, she's immortal, but might have finally been killed as she slept by the 100-eyed giant Argus, servant of Hera. However, as some sources match her to the monster killed by Apollo in Delphi, this can become even more confusing, as most state that was Python, a male snake monster, who we'll discuss later, but others link this to a nameless Dracania. Now we'll talk about Dracania. This is not a particular individual really, but a general term for the female dragon or snake monsters in Greek mythology. Now the term Dracania would be what I used for all these beings rather than Echidnae, but I'll discuss it later. Within those labelled as Dracania are these female beings, that some of which have nymph upper halves. The Delphine Dracania is thought to be either full snake monster or with a more humanoid upper half, and some authors claim she was foster mother to Typhon. This is probably why she's linked to Echidna above, but most often I have heard this particular being to be Python. Other Dracania include Echidna, of course, and can include Lamia, also called Cerberus, Scylla, and some reputations of the goddess Ceto, the possible mother of some of these. Just quickly, I'll mention that I separate Lamia and Cerberus, as Cerberus is the more draconic form of Lamia. Lamia herself has a much more intricate mythology we'll discuss later, but in books on fantastical beasts, including one I used to have, she was drawn as a four-legged dragon without wings but a human's head and breast that hunted and devoured beings in the desert. This form, Cerberus, is often interpreted as a form of dragon and less like Lamia, as it was said to prey on livestock, and the locals asked the Oracle of Delphi, once again it's around Delphi and so often thought the female version of Python, and Apollo told her to sacrifice a young man to her, only for the male lover of the young man chosen to hurl the dragon from the mountainside. So that Cerberus version, with having a being sacrificed to her, fits well into the Dracania and thereby the Echidnae, but I don't equate her as Lamia. Now, also amongst the Dracania is Campi, another female dragon-like monster who guarded the gate to Tartarus, keeping the 100-handers and the Cyclops locked away during the reign of the Titans. Another member of the Titans, Campi was holding back the potential allies Zeus needed in the war against the Titans, and so he killed her. But Nonus gives a pretty intense description of her, and well, here's a basic rundown of these details. High-headed, a many crooked-shaped body, thousands of crawlers, her name is linked to caterpillars or silkworms, swarming in her viperish teeth, spits poison around her neck with 50 heads of various wild beasts, appeared woman to the middle of her body, and is even likened to Scylla in looks, save for the addition of dusky wings. It's a really lengthy description when you look into it, but it very much describes a dragon-like monster that matches up in some ways to Typhon. Now lastly, I've talked about the Greek beings that I wind up together to build up the Echidnae form of the veiled serpents. I'm going to talk about another one, Tiamat. Tiamat is the cosmic dragoness in Mesopotamia. Primordial goddess of the sea in the form of a great dragoness, she is the wife of Apsu and the mother of the first generation of gods, including various dragons and serpent beings, and even the half-human, half-scorpion beings. She was created by the convergence of many sacred waters, the goddess of chaos, and when her husband rightly guesses that their children are planning to overthrow him, he is killed in the process. When it happens, Tiamat rages against her children who have murdered him, which is when she is said to have taken the form of the sea dragoness, created the dragons by placing poison instead of blood into them, and to stop her raging, Marduk catches her in net and slaughters her. Tiamat is a being like Echidna with a manic brood and a mother of monsters, but unlike Echidna, she is more important and the one that is ripped apart, and the heaven and earth is formed from her body. But Tiamat is still a being whose death is needed in order for the new world, the better world perhaps, to exist, and often is ascribed the myth of Apollo slaying Python. So why did I pull these beings up into my Veil universe and make them one? Simple. Milton refers to the fallen in hell as including the Titans and mentions Typhon amongst them. Plus, later gods within the Babylonian mythos have been corrupted into demons too, with some equating a worship of Moloch and Marduk being similar, idolatry, and so pulling Tiamat amongst the demons of the Veil wasn't too hard. Now, within the Veil, it would have been normal to refer to all of these beings by the more proper title of Draconia. However, the knowledge of a demoness in hell titled Echidna, who is assumed sister to Asmodee and producer of these dragon-like man-eaters, meant that during the period where the night predators were being made distinct enemies to everyone else, they were given the demonic title of Echidnae, especially as whether other members of the serpent group produce other serpents. These beings produce a serpent type every third child, with the first and second being any of the other species associated with their kind. I'll do a separate piece amongst Veil culture discussing the Children of Echidna this month, as each species will get themselves covered eventually. Now to discuss Echidnae, which include other Draconia. Okay, side, neutral, although demonic. Created by children of the demoness Echidna and Typhon, who produced with other demons upon the ground and humans too. Created for, Echidna wanted an army upon the earth to aid Lucifer in fighting God's chosen people. Created when? After the fall. Physical description. Females vary but tend to have the similar image of beautiful women for the upper torso, down onto either long snake-like bodies or dragon-like bodies or crocodile-like bodies, but generally something large and reptilian, often accompanied with snake hair or other bestial heads around the neck. Males either come in the Typhon form of human in form but giant, with 1,000 dragon or snake heads around their upper torso or neck. Abilities: breathe fire, change shape, luring prey with beautiful voices or hypnotizing eyes, incredible speed to strike and strength to crush, poisonous fangs and sometimes breath, as well as being man-eaters. They also have the ability to produce children of varying types because they are still so close to their demonic heritage, and can produce dog offspring with multiple heads, Hydra, Aethon, Laden, Chimera, Sphinx, and many other species when they pair with a male of their own species. If they pair with a male of another species, their offspring are likely to be either another Echidnae, a human, or the species of the partner, making them rather unique. Most known for, Echidna and Typhon, the demons in hell. Weaknesses: the point of the body where the human part connects to the reptile is sensitive, and Echidnae are not immune to the poison of others of their species, so often spearing them in the stomach with a poison-coated tip is the only way to kill them. Otherwise they are one of the few truly immortal beings, with many choosing to actively move into hell after enduring time upon the earth. Number: there is thought to be around 3,000 at the very most, but even though they are significantly rare, they are treated very badly in the Veil, and many try to live in mountainous and wild regions where they are left to their own devices rather than enter a society that does not like them. Well-known beings, Echidna herself and Tiamat, one of their daughters during the time of Baal's rebellion. Characters in stories, Thalia and his faithful servant. And final comments. Yeah, I really like these creatures, and there's just so much potential for them in writing, let alone the fact that they just can have so many crazy offspring. I just always love that. I hope it does make sense to you all the same. Okay, thank you. Bye.